introduction for understanding that ethics is significant for any kind of professional and professional institute is trying to bring overview of why you have ethics as part of business. Now, let me say, or let me give you a few examples that in the past, how there has been some ethical or corporate scandals over time, and why this has come into notice and come into picture of why corporate scandals need to be taken care of. Okay. So corporate scandals seem to have dominated businesses at some point of time, and it brings a wide income inequality and the aftermath of a great recession. So some of the popular and some of the well-known scandals, like for example, in 2010, one second, yeah, 2010, you have like scandals of data mining and how businesses are manipulating information. And when it came to 2019, for example, 24/7 Wall Street identifies a biggest corporate scandal, right? So I'm sure you must be aware of the corporate scandal of Wall Street at one point of time, and there was a famous movie of that as well. Now, when it comes to the ethical values of corporate governance, right? What do you understand by that? Why are the values and corporate governance so important? Why is it important that when we come to values and businesses, these things need to be put into accountability? Now, let's think it this way: the balance of market opportunities, one needs to maintain accountability and ethical integrity, right? So that you can define challenge for business enterprise and understand, like, if a person is doing business with stock market and industrialization, right? The accountability and responsibility of business enterprise is constantly a question. So when these kind of failures of corporate governance and business ethics takes place, it does make way to question the ethical framework and governance for business. A substantial increase in significance and impact of corporate and environmental initiatives need to be understood very carefully, because in that way, and because this can actually question the motives of any kind of business. Okay, now let's think about ethics. Where did the word ethics even come from? So in the ancient Greek civilization, Aristotle could distinguish between the basic trade required for an economy, right? And from then on, the significance and the mandatory prospects of trade between nations and understanding wealth and accounting, that's where ethics was put a lot of value. Okay, and as technological advancement took place with industrial revolution, there has been a wider inspection of why ethics and corporate governance should be followed. However, in some countries, in some places, in some businesses, when it comes to accounting ethics, for example, sometimes you do have like some manipulation of data, right? And when it comes to auditing, it's important to understand that how the association and the development of the founding of professional institute needs to understand the practitioners within the field, that why you need to understand the barriers to entry and the codes of conduct. According to you, what do you think are the codes of conduct? You know, and why do you think it's important? Can you reflect upon that? Think about the business that you're doing. Think about the business or parts of in the future where you are going to be associated with. what kind of specific field you think you are going to be part of. Because as part of the professional institutions, every business has their own code of conducts and they have employee handbooks. So you have the do's and don'ts of business, and you're being explained of what is relevant and not relevant according to the needs and expectation of the business. It means that when it comes to the nature of business, you have questions that have always been risen because you are trying to see what is part of public interest. You have your customers and your ethical conduct and connecting with different businesses to see what works and what doesn't work. Sometimes businesses do go through ethical dilemma, and then this makes it difficult for the business or the person because you know that something may not be right, but then you are actually, you have to do it anyway, conduct something anyway. Now when it comes to accounting ethics, right, what do you think about this? Accounting ethics is an important topic, especially for accountants and when it comes to financial fields, because you have key personnel who access financial information, excuse me, right? And the financial information is where you are going to be checking the statements like income statement, balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. So these are the core statements when you look at financial information. Such power also involves the potential and possibilities for abuse of information or manipulation of numbers to enhance company perceptions of enforce, or like you're enforcing earnings for management. That's why accounting ethics is very important so that you are not enforcing earnings. Now, when we talk about enforcing earnings, what are your earnings? Cash earnings, for example, of how much money, how much cash flow you are getting, right? Your operating cash flow generated by the company. And whatever money is coming to you, you are making sure that the company's net income is according to the number of the shares outstanding, for example. And when ethics is concerned, it is important that you do have the required course of audit. This means you are using your accounting to check the cash flow, the earnings, and you're looking at the financial information, not only one aspect, but various aspects. And without meeting the requirements of auditing or an accounting ethics, an audit must instantly be paused, right? Because you want things to be gone with the flow. So that's why it is very important that all the numbers that are being put or explained or showed are clear. Ethics and the code of conduct, for example, ethics and ethical behavior refer more to general principles such as honesty, integrity, and morals. What is important is you are also seeing the argument that leads to conclusions relating to the current and future roles of the professions of that are built in certain environment, right? So you have the internal and the external environment. You also need to put special attention given to how one needs to adapt the business in creating sustainable urban environment. Now, what is all of that? What does that even mean, right? You are trying to understand that when it comes to the ethics and the code of conduct, you are referring to the general principles of what integrity and morals mean. The code of professional conduct, sometimes you have rules set by governing attributes that need certification. Although the rules could be set by different bodies around the world, you have different businesses that they outsource accounting, I mean, accountants, right? And then you have rules. You have to make sure that some rules are universal. So What are the rules when it comes to the accounting, when it comes to the ethical conduct? First, think about rules and guidance. One of the key rules set by professional accounting bodies, for example, like in North America, is the idea of independence, which means that you need to understand how you can be totally objective and must be without ties or relationships with the client, since this could potentially impair your judgment, especially when you're doing auditing work, right, with accounting and finance. And when you're going through this, if you're working in accounting, you want the best for your client, but you're also making sure that you have a fine line of independence, which means you're independent in fact and independent in appearance. Then only you are able to get the proper facts. When it comes to independent in facts, it refers to any kind of factual information, so that if you're an accountant or an auditor, or you own shares or other investments in the firm, you know what to do. You know how to get the facts, and you know how to understand and read the facts. Okay? Now, independence in appearance, you have to sometimes be like subjective when you're doing the business, right? And you have to check whether at the end of the year, what are you exactly interpreting? How are you able to maintain independence while making sure that you're also having a reasonable observation? Now, threats, there could be some threats when you're too independent as an accountant. That depends if you're outsourcing, right? Sometimes the self interest, self review, intimidation, right? But when it comes to important rules need to be followed by professional accounting bodies. You have sometimes contingent fees that are not allowed. For example, audit fees that are based on a percent of the net income, or like a percent of from the bank loan. You have integrity and due care, like auditing work must be done thoroughly, diligently, and timely manner. As an accountant, you have certain timelines that you have to follow. And as a professional competence, you cannot um, take advantage of something or take something for granted and manipulate data. Auditors must be competent, which means he or she must have both the necessary academic knowledge and experience for the relevant industry that you are going to work in. That's where the professional information and the professional part comes. So when it comes to social institutions, multifaceted social structures, and understanding the cultural cognitive, you need to see that how certain elements and are associated with different activities. You're providing value and moral dimensions of social life that encompass shared conceptions of social reality, right, with different businesses. That's why you have to see the economics, the political science, and sociology when it comes to ethics.